All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Want to welcome everybody today to today's session where we're talking about designing high impact stratum views. My name's Adam Kurtz, and I'll be stepping you through today's topic. And we want to just talk a little bit about stratum views, how creating a view or updating a view, whatever you might be doing. Um, common problems with poorly designed views, which is what we try to, steer away from. You want to keep certain things in mind, keeping things fairly efficient so that the analysis is fast and easy for the user, better usability, and actionable insights. So clearly you want to have a focus on exactly what type of view you'll be building and what it will contain, what its analytical purpose would be. And then, different things to consider when you're building a view or updating a view is, are you going to, I guess the first, probably the most important decision to make is what type, how are you going to be treating time? Will it be a time series or a time hierarchy view? Additionally, do you want to have paging options, or do you want to show all rows? There's some considerations there to update certain display options. Conditional formatting, which would highlight certain anomalies that make it easier on the eyes for your analysts so that they can see certain outliers that are outside of certain types of variances or variance percentages. Makes it easier for them to identify. Parameter groups is another way to have the view have more focus. You can ask the user to to pick a customer or a product depending on what you're asking them to pick, and that allows them to filter the view and have it more focused in on what they want to see versus throwing everything at them. Attributes, these are additional data points for the different dimensions that are available within Stratum. So it's certainly something to think about as well. Do you want to include them? Do you want to have any calculations off of them? So a lot of things to consider when you're designing views. And again, this is the Stratum Data Hub. So we'll be talking primarily about building views today, which is on the Stratum analytical side of the hub. And we'll be using our web-based interface to demonstrate some of these concepts. Building views, obviously the views are part of the web-based interface. So that's what we'll be spending most of our time today. But as you can see, there's different ways to gain access to your data using dashboards, Excel. You can tap in directly. You can have the view exported on a scheduled basis. So we have other sessions that kind of deal with that. So we'll be certainly you can go to our YouTube channel to see some of those, or I'll highlight the upcoming sessions here at the end of the session so that we know what's coming in the pipeline for the next insight sessions. All right. So, I guess first things first, you want to understand the user experience. You want to make sure that, you design the view for the users and how they analyze the data. And like I said, these things, time series, time hierarchy, how you want to deal with time is probably the first and foremost question that you need to answer first. Do you want this to be a view with a series of time where they have a trend, or do you want them to basically have the ability to pick a time range? So certainly there's different ways to handle time, and I guess one of the first things you need to decide is how you want to do that. You can also drill to a view to kind of provide best of both worlds. Um, you can have a view that's time range. I'd call it time series here. It's actually time range. And you can drill to another view that has a time hierarchy that will give them more of a trend of the time units, either months, weeks, whatever it is that you decide to use. So, and again, I say that because if you change it, once you build the view and you want to change the time series, time range to a time hierarchy, then you almost have to start over again. It will take away all the measures, and again, it would be advantageous for you to know what you want first before you start building, which is a best practice. Key KPIs, calculations, common drill paths. These are things that you definitely want to consider as well. Have a focus for the view. What's the view's analytical purpose? Um, is it a sales view? Do you want to provide open orders, profitability? Is this an inventory view? Who's your audience? Are they sales folks? Are they supply chain folks? Good things to know before you start designing the view. And then certainly match the layout to the business's workflow. So understanding how they analyze the data, understanding what they key in on or focus in on. It's just a good thing to understand the user community's analytical process before you start building off these views. So choose the right row and column structure. So a view can be tabular in structure. It can also be a crosstab. Um, you can also transpose it very easily. So if you start with one method and you want to switch to another, um, this is pretty easy to update. So if you put everything on your rows and you think it looks better on the columns, or if you're dealing with time hierarchy, typically, time can be put on both axes. So and I can show you how you can build out time so that, it presents nicely to the user. Organize the data for readability. You want to have a good balance. One thing you don't want to do is throw a bunch of, data at and just do a big data dump to the user, and have them come and deal with what's important to them. So organize the data for definitely readability, have that focus, limit clutter and unnecessary fields, and then prioritize high value metrics first. So again, understanding the user community and what they want to see and what's important to them is really, really important. So designing the view for fast navigation, you want to use logical drill hierarchies and attributes. You want to start at higher levels and then drill to detail. And then you can minimize excessive scrolling by using paging and showing all and grouping related information together. So have certain measures grouped together that are likewise, similar to each other. And then you can use calc columns for separation. And you can fill in with color fills and whatnot to create that separation and make it look more cosmetically pleasing for the users. And this overall reduces the clicks needed for analysis, which is a good goal to have. Advanced filtering and parameter groups is another way to have the view focused in on what they want to see. So you can start the view with a filter or a question to the user and have them kind of filter it based on the customer they want to see or the products that they want to see before they start going into the data. So it helps users focus in on what works well for them. And this keeps the view library lean and efficient, so you don't have a bunch of different unique views out there that basically do the same thing. So that's something that you want to stay away from. And create reusable filter sets. You can also have user lists available to the users so that you can have certain groups of customers or products available so that they can reuse these filter sets. We call them user lists. So that's another great way to allow them to pick from a specific set for filtering as opposed to them identifying that and creating that on their own. So a good balance between flexibility and simplicity is always a good thing. You don't want to make it too simple, but you certainly want to make it flexible enough for them to get what they need and navigate as efficiently as possible. And then don't over filter it, right? If you have certain filters and then you have certain filters on certain hierarchies that are not even drilled to yet, it's probably not a great idea to over filter the view. So you just, again, a good balance there is something to keep in mind. What calculations do you want to include? Another good thing to think about is, do you want to, when you start including the measures in the view, do you want to include the calculations, of course? What types of calculations do you want? Are they going to be variances or percentages? Make them meaningful. Again, know your user community and provide the calculations that they expect. And so that's something that, again, understanding your community would certainly help. Support trend and growth analysis. Again, variance percentages or achievement percentages do a great job of this. So Definitely helps them focus in on growth or decline for that matter, when they can sort on that column or do some filtering on that column and very quickly identify outliers. And that helps them focus on immediate actionable insights so that they can certainly start getting those insights earlier and making decisions faster, more efficiently without too much clutter. Conditional formats do a nice job of this, where you can build in a conditional format to add in coloring or some sort of status indicator to indicate whether there's an upward or downward trend. So these are certain tools that you can use within the view to help gain more focus and call out certain outliers to the user so that they can see these outliers very easily and start drilling in on those. When you're building the view, again, visual design, readability is always a good thing. You want to use clear naming conventions. So use common business terms. When you're creating these calculations, you have the opportunity to name the calculations. So you want to make sure that you name it accordingly. Give it a good name. Make it, if it's a sales variance, tell it is it a dollar sales variance or a unit? This metadata goes a long way, in terms of just explaining or naming the measure, and then certainly using the glossary is another great way to document what's in the view so that you can write additional information about and provide additional data on those different columns within the view by using the Stratum glossary. Formatting, format strings, column color fill, another great way to identify dollars, units, or to group certain columns together that are similar. Sales, orders, costs, all might have different column color fills, and that gives the view a little bit more organization and it's more cosmetically pleasing so the user can kind of segment out these different groups of measures that are similar in nature. Highlight exceptions and anomalies. Like I said, conditional formatting using status indicators helps these outliers or these anomalies kind of jump out to the user so that they don't necessarily have to find it themselves or wade through rows and rows. They can easily identify it by looking at red cells or downward looking arrows, which typically highlight sales declines. And like I said, you don't want to just dump a bunch of data to the user. Have a focus, and then you can also drill to other views to provide additional data, additional detail without having that in the initial view. So it gives it more of a guided analysis feel to the views. So again, things to think about. Key takeaways: keep these best practices in mind when you're updating or creating these views. Use all these mentioned features and strategies, and you'll be in good shape. Identify, what the analytical purpose of the view would be, how you're going to deal with time, what kind of calculations you're going to include. Map it out. Write it down. It's always good to have a plan. Review the current views and new views so that do any type of view rationalization is always a good exercise. I've seen customer sites where they've got literally thousands of views. Probably not a good idea. So you want to make sure that you keep this lean and efficient as possible. Have a plan, and then execute the concepts and integrate these concepts into the views. Additional design resources are certainly these insight classes that we give every other week. Will help give you different tips and techniques on how to use Stratum. So definitely want to keep tuning in. And then certainly online help and examples are available through the interface. We also have a YouTube channel that you could certainly view other past insight classes as well. If you have any questions, you can contact me. There's my email and my phone number. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any issues of building the views, or if you have any questions about how to do certain things. Don't hesitate to contact me. There's our web address, and don't forget about the YouTube channel as well. All right, so let's take a look at the interface. Like I said, we're going to step in and kind of build a view from scratch here to see what we need to think about in terms of building the view. So my analytical purpose would be to have a view that's going to give the user a feel for how sales is doing, and then we'll compare that to a prior year we'll build it in a calculation, add a conditional format, and we want to make sure that we have all the levels available and attributes available that make sense for the user to analyze. So I'm going to right click here on one of my views, and I'm going to select new view, and that's going to bring in a blank view. So I'm starting from scratch here. And first things first, you can see that the View Explorer opens up here on the right-hand side. It's a great tool to use to populate your view with all the different components that you need for the view. And this is where you need to start thinking about whether to use time hierarchy or time as a range. So you can highlight the measure items folder to see what the time range is. You can see it's on by default. So if I were to build this out as a time range, then I would just leave that as is, or I can say no to that and apply that, and then I'm out of time range, and then time now becomes a level. Just like any other level customer product, I can place it on my rows and columns, and I can show trends. Let's build out the time range first, and then we'll see what we can do about drilling to or creating a time hierarchy, and you can see the differences. So time range, we're going to go ahead and build out. We're going to right click on measure items and add in our regular measure items. So this will bring up our sales measures, or all the measures actually. And we can just put in a keyword search for sales and look at all the sales measures that are available. So right away, I'm going to highlight sales amount. As you can see down below are my different ranges of time. And then the first thing you need to decide is what time unit are you going to display here? Are they going to be days, months, quarters? It's up to you in terms of fiscal month, how you want to give that range to the user. So I'm going to select months, and then do you want this view to be current or a specific time, a year? It's, typically you'd want to build this view to be dynamic so that the users don't have to go in and adjust the time range or change the year. As you move forward through the years, they don't have to do anything. The view just stays current. So let's go with that plan. And then for that, we want to make sure that we use our base time periods. So instead of picking an absolute year, I'm going to select current year. And that way, the view will be dynamic and it will move with time. As we move into future years, this view will move with us automatically. So current year to current year is what we want. And then if it's going to be a year-to-date situation, we want to make sure that we choose the first time month, in this case, from our from period. And then we can then select either current month or previous month. I see a lot of customers wanting to select previous month because that's the most current closed month. So we'll roll with that, and we're going to go ahead and add that in. And as you can see on the right-hand side, it's added in, and we can see that it's been added to the measure items folder. And then we want last year's. So we want a perspective on last year so we can kind of see how the growth is occurring, or any declines for that matter. And so we're going to go ahead and select last year for the same measure, sales amount. So we're going to go ahead and add that in as well. So as you can see, it's nice to kind of stay within the menu here so that you can add in additional things as needed. Certain things you don't have to change, like as you saw, I didn't have to change my periods at all because I want the same periods for the prior year. So it was real easy for me to add in current and last year very quickly. If I want to then put in my units, then I can have a perspective on not only dollars, but also units of sales. So again, I'm playing the same game here where I'm just going to go ahead and add that in for last year, and then we'll get current year in there as well. And there you have it. So there we have our regular measures. So we'll go ahead and click exit since we have everything we need here, and then we'll click OK. But we don't have to click OK just yet. And that's what I love about the View Explorer, is that I can continue to add more stuff to my view, right? So in this case, if I want to put on my rows certain hierarchies, I'm going to right click my rows and select edit. And then I'm going to select certain hierarchies that I want within my view. So again, understand your audience, understand your analyst. What do they want to see here? How do they want to start their analysis out? Is it something that is regional, so you can kind of show where the sales are occurring? Maybe a division, so they can understand whether there's certain divisions they want to drill in on. As you can see, I'm just putting in certain keywords, or not even a word, just what it starts out with, customer related dimensions. So if I want to add in sold to or ship to for that matter, then I can very quickly get those in as well. And then finally, product. Do I want some product related dimensions? Of course I do. So I want product family, and then certainly product. So there you have it. And we can reorder this once we get these into the view. And so we're going to go ahead and click OK to that. And as you can see, now they're available within my View Explorer. And so here I can go ahead and click OK, and that'll go ahead and show me a preview of the data. And there it is. So right away, it shows me my region. And as you can see up here in my navigational pane, there's all the levels that I added, and there's the ordering of it. If I don't like the ordering, for instance, if I want division first, drag and drop it over and make it first. Real simple. If you forgot something, click the plus sign and add it in. Real simple, right? So keep things, as you can see, the interface is very easy to navigate. And if you have certain things you didn't get quite right, well, no worries. You can always drag and drop things around once you're in the view design itself. So here I've got this year, last year's sales, last year, this year units. So right away, I'd probably want to drag and drop that over. So it's this year, last year, this year, last year. Now, so this looks great. Now I can drill in on the different levels, as you can see, and follow down this path navigationally, which makes sense. I'm starting at aggregate level and drilling to further detail. As I get down to a customer level, do I want to include anything else for the customer, as you can see? And I'm going to turn my glossary off for now, just to kind of clean it up a little bit. And for customer, you can right-click on the description column and add in more attributes. And these are additional data points for the customer. So if you want to see what city they're in or what country they're from, you can certainly just double-click these and add these in so that you can make those available in your view as well. And these are sortable, and filtering as well is available for these different columns. So if I want to sort on sold to or country for that matter, I can then add in my sort for that particular attribute as well. So don't forget your attributes. It's not only can you describe the customer, but also have different data points for the customer as well. And as I drill in on certain customer sold tos, and I go down to my product family, and then finally on down to product for one of my bigger, like tender vegetables, which has quite a bit of data associated to it. As you can see, the product itself also has attributes as well. So you want to make sure that you include certain product attribute information as well. So again, you can play the same game here, add in some attributes. And there's, as you can see, a lot of them. If you want to do like a list price calculation, you can do that too. Some of these others snuck in as well as a default, and you can take those away and clean it up a little bit. So now I've got list price for the customer for these products, and I can calculate against that field as well. And I can show you that in just a second. Let's go all the way back. So if I click back on division, and now we're back to our first level. As you can see, it's very easy to go in and then get back to aggregate levels as well. What else do we need? KPIs, calculations, right? So we want to go ahead and right click, and I'm going to right click on my sales amount column for last year, because I want my calculation to be inserted to the right of this particular column. So I'm going to add in calculations, and then it brings up my calculation expression window. And well, what do I do next? Well, I could do a couple of things. I can build out a variance, or I can build out a variance percent. So you're going to want to expand your measure items so you can get to the measures that are available within the view. And I can certainly keep things real simple. If I just want a simple variance, I can click on this year's sales, put in a dash for minus, and then click on last year's sales. And that's a simple variance, right? Simple math. I can then format it as needed if I want to put a dollar sign in there as well. So formatting your data is another way to make the view more readable. So think about the readability. Do I want to make it a fill? So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and fill in a color because I want to parse this out, almost create a separation, if you will, between the dollars and the units. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in on the fly as well. So I put in my fill color too. And then finally, name it, right? You want to make sure that you name things that make sense. So in this case, dollar variance or dollar var, you can certainly just write it all out if you want, or keep things more abbreviated as dollar var. And again, goes back to understanding your audience. Do they use this type of terminology? Does it make sense for you to name it the same? Probably. Again, it's look at some of their existing reports. What's some of the naming conventions they're using there, and might give you a better tip in terms of how you want to name things here in the views. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and validate that. It says cool. It likes the syntax. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then we'll go ahead and see how that looks. And as you can see right away, I've created a separator now just by putting in that fill color. Here's dollar, here's my dollar variance, and then separating out my units to the right. Pretty simple. If I want to add in now I'm going to do a variance percent here for my units. So I'm going to come here on to the end. I'm going to add in a calculation here. And in this case, I'm going to use my viewer functions, my Stratum viewer functions, which makes things a lot easier in terms of creating calculations. And as you can see, there's different things I can choose here. Percent of change would probably be more appropriate. So I can just go ahead and click on percent of change, and you can see it brings the syntax over. I don't have to necessarily know what math I want to do. I just know that I want a percent of change. And I want a percent of change on those two, this year and last year's sales units columns. So I just simply select my numerator, my denominator, and voila, I've got the percent of change defined this year and last year's sales units. So up here, I'm going to play the same game, right? I want to make sure that I put in a unit display mask. And I can include decimals if I want. But if it's finished good, it probably is better not to include any decimals. It probably have just full units. And again, I'm going to do that same kind of color, do the same coloring, kind of create a different, or I can choose a different color, kind of highlighting that these are my unit calculations. So maybe give it a different color. And here I'm going to do a unit variance percent. So that would make more sense, right? We'll go ahead and click OK. And there you have it. What did I do wrong? I forgot to get my display mask, or my format string. So it's a percentage, and I failed to do that. No worries. We can right click, go to properties, and then we can go into the format string, and then I should have chosen a percent sign. So I chose the wrong one. And in this case, it might behoove you to go ahead and include decimal spaces so that they can see that as well. That looks better. Okay, so we built a view here. We've got the time range in place so that if the user ever wants to go in and change the time range, they can go in and highlight all of the measures, and then they can change that monthly time range. If they perhaps wanted to see a first quarter view of things, they can do January through March, click OK, and voila, it's that simple. They've got a first quarter analytical view. And that's the advantage of the time range. It makes things real simple for the user to identify, the time units that they need, the time series that they want, and pick that accordingly. And as you can see, it makes it real simple for them to do that. As I drill into further detail, maybe I'll just drill directly into the customer so we get quite a bit of rows here. Nothing's really popping out at me, right? So we want to make sure that maybe we add in a conditional format. Maybe I'll do that under my units variance column. So again, right clicking that column header and going to properties will open up my properties menu for that particular calculation column. Conditional format is a great way to highlight certain anomalies. So if I want to create a custom one, or I can pick one that's already there. Here's one that's called sales percent of change that I can use. And if I go into custom, I can see what the rules are of that. And as you can see, it's telling me that it's basically some sort of 10%. As you can see, a decimal for 10% there is representing anything greater than or equal to 10% is going to be green in nature or up. As you can see, the icon over here. If I want to change the icon, I can come in and pick another icon as needed. I can go into colored different arrows. I can go into status indicators and pick certain signs and different flags. It's up to you in terms of how you want to make this look and feel. Right? I can do the same thing for the icon here. If I wanted to make sure it looked maybe synonymous to the other one that I just chose, then I can go in and use the flag option here for that one. Right, and then the other one's neutral. So as you can see, Concept here is, I just customized this, as needed. I took one from scratch and, or not from scratch, but it was pre-built, and then I customize it as I see fit. Certainly, I can change the ranges here. So if I want something that's over maybe 20%, and then negative 10% would be, well, I don't really have, the nature of my data is that I don't have too many negative numbers. So we'll do something like 5%, positive 5%. Anything less than that would be um, not good. All right, so let's take a look at that and see what's, and then we'll give it a different a traffic light name for sales units, and we'll go ahead and get that applied. And there we have it. So now we've got different things that are middle ground. We've got middle ground here that didn't necessarily, so we really didn't have anything under 5% per se. So at least not at the customer level. But as you can see, things are starting to pop out at me here. So I can see that the growth is there, and I can certainly sort this in descending fashion and see that, these pop out to me as growth. And I can go back in, I can adjust that conditional format as needed as well. But yeah, I mean, this is how you'd want to save the view. And then if you want to turn back on your glossary and name certain things like actual sales, as you can see, actual sales is already named. I've already written a definition of actual sales. So when the user comes into the glossary and they're like, well, does sales actually include returns? And as you can see, this is a measure that's net of returns. So that answered their question about that. And then also, if you want to include the source of the data, what ERP table it's derived from, if you have that information, the more information typically, the better here because it's in the glossary, and you have quite a bit of information of room here to type in a lot of stuff. You can actually write a novel about the application here. So the glossary is a very important concept in terms of defining, what the different components you have in your view, giving it more data about the data, right? Metadata. So, and really rounding out the additional information you can provide to the user. And they can turn that on or off as needed. Another nice thing I like about the glossary is that you can come in and click on, like, for instance, St. Louis distributors. I click in on them, and then I can see that, they are in St. Louis. We can see who the contact is there, their email address, their phone number. So all the attributes become available to me through the glossary. So the glossary is a very important, component that you can use to not only document the different components within the view, but it also provides a summary of the different attributes that are available for the different levels that you drill to. So for instance, if I was maybe at product level, drag and drop product over here instead, drill in on product. And so here, if I click in on peach halves, I'm going to get a different list of attributes, right, for peaches. So this is something that you can have available to the user. They can turn on their glossary and voila, they have all this different data at their fingertips now. And if they want to add that in or add any of those in as needed, they can then add in the attribute relationship and then get in whatever, different data points that they want to add in for product and make those columns. As you can see, end of product is not really being highlighted or used there. It's not being populated, so certainly I can either hide or get rid of that one, and then that looks a lot better as well. So, attributes, another great way, another important piece that you want to include so that they have all these different data points that are available as well as they drill into those different components. Turning off the glossary, kind of cleaning this up a bit. If I want to go ahead and save this as it is today, as it is right now, I can go ahead and give it a name. So again, same rules apply here. You want to give it a name that makes sense versus last year, right? You have a description. This is a sales view, et cetera, et cetera. What type of view are you saving it as? Is it global, shared? Is it just your own personal view? Making it global will make it global to the user community, and this is typically reserved for your gold standard views, so that this becomes basically the religion of the analytics that you want to include. If it's personal, it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. Only you can really see it. So it's really geared out for just you. Or if you cannot create a global view, because not everyone has that capability, you can make it shared. And then that becomes it is available for other users to come in, run the view, and then you guys can collaborate on that particular view as well as a shared view, right? So, and then down below is the view group that you want to include it to. It's already highlighted for sales and profitability because that's the view group I right-clicked on and created this view from scratch. So then you go ahead and save that away, right? Now, if we look at a different type of view, for instance, if I were to run a comparative sales view that I have from scratch or that's already been built, here are some of the other concepts that you can do. For instance, this particular view is a time range view as well. As you can see, I've got January through September of this year and last year. But I'm also, if we right click on this particular year-to-date column over here, we can see that we're using a drill down view. So we're going to drill to another view that will actually give me the time trend. It will drill me from this view as time range to a view that uses time as hierarchy. So let's see how that works. For instance, if I were to maybe sort this in descending fashion, so that I get some of the heavy hitters up on top, like Farm Fresh product brand, and it's coming in at roughly about 85 mil year to date. Well, it'd be nice to see that number spread out through the month so I can kind of see the seasonal curve of the product. I can see last year's trends as well and get a good perspective on basically seasonality of the product. So I'm going to click in on that, and it's going to take me to that monthly trend sales. As you can see, as I hover over it, it tells me where it's going to take me. And so that just happens naturally based on the drill to view feature. So as I click on the 85 mil, so there's that 85 mil. We saw that number, and now we can see it by month. As you can see, it passed over the product brand, Farm Fresh. That's the one we clicked in on. And now we can see the different this year and last year comparisons. And we can see that in March, we actually blew away last year's number. But in January, we're under it. And I can certainly add in additional formatting or variance calculations. Probably would be a good idea to do that as well and have that available as well. But as you can see, drilling to a view that has time as a hierarchy instead of time range. So now I can see all the different time components that are trended out for that range that I had in the prior view. And on top of that, I can drill in on it. For instance, if I drill in on January, it will then show me the weeks for January. And then I can drill and we can see the different weeks where we missed the mark. And then I can see what days are under that particular week as well. So you can stack the time range, the time components as needed for my rows. Notice that my years are on columns, right? And those are filtered just to include 24 and 23, right? Current and last year. So you want to make sure that this always stays dynamic. Right. And as I close that out, it brings me back to the original view. And if I want to see how the next one, first choice, 55 mil, I can drill in on that. And that becomes available as well. The 55 mil is trended out. I can see last year's numbers as well. And I'm off and running in terms of getting the data that I need very quickly, very efficiently. I don't have to search around for the view and add in, the filter. It does all that automatically by using the drill to view feature. Another thing you can do is take it to another view that provides different types of data. For instance, this column here is going to take me to an open order view. And the reason why is because this is current month versus last year. So we're not done shipping for the month. So I'd like to see how I can maybe get some of these products out so that I can, get my bolster these numbers a little bit. I got quite a bit of red happening. So here I can go in and click on, for instance, prime grown, and it will then take me to the open order view. So I don't have to select the view, add the filters. Again, drill to the view. It'll then apply the filter. Notice how it passed over the brand, prime grown, automatically. So I don't have to do that myself. And now I've got all the different open orders for all the different customers. How do we get this product out? It might be a good idea to maybe email this to my production guys or my shipping, my warehouse, include them in my email. Uh, I can copy me, I can include a link to this view, and I can send that to my production or my warehouse guys and get an idea of when we can get some of these open orders shipped. So we can get more product invoiced, more books, numbers on the books for the current month and bolstering my numbers for current month. So the drill to view is really powerful in terms of how you want to, use that. And it makes things just more efficient. It really guides the user down a path where they can really see, how things are occurring. And then finally, you can also use, for instance, this customer profitability view is using parameter groups. Notice how it's asking me to choose or select customers before it even shows me the data. So here I can then select by clicking on the funnel there, it will then give me a list of the customers, and then I can pick and choose or search for a customer of who I want to fill in the filter for. So here I'm just going to highlight, instead of searching, I'll highlight the ones that I want. I click OK. It fills them in for me, and then I click OK, and it runs the view. So here I have a view that's more highlighted for, asking me what customers I want to include. And once I select them, I click OK, they become available as well. Instead of just throwing everything at the user, certainly they have that option, and you can require them to either fill this in or not. I did not require it, so I can actually bypass this and not select anything at all, and then it dumps a bunch of data at me, right? So that's where the parameter groups come into play, and it really helps, maybe ask the customer or the user what they want to see first before you present it to them. And that's all built out. If you go into the View Explorer under parameter groups, you can then build that out as needed and build in your the different parameters that you want to include. For instance, here I can go into properties and it will show me, down below, here's the prompt that I gave them, tell them to select the customers. Here's the type of, filter option that I gave them. I selected, I gave them a list of customers basically. I can give them a drop down, but I want maybe them to select more than just one customer. Whereas if I choose the drop down and I apply that, it changes it to a drop down instead, and I can just choose one, and then it works that way as well. I can also add in another parameter and do two at once. So maybe and have them select what they want to do. So by putting in a drop down along with the you can turn it on for either you can have both, right? And parameter type, well, it should be customer, right? And I need to make that customer as well. For some reason, it's not letting me, but you can have both. And if you want to reprompt, you can click on the reprompt button, and it'll then have another option here for the drop down as well. Oh, it already has a drop down. That's probably why I changed that one too. Let's change that back. Let's try that one more time. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to do, is that now I have an option where I can have them either select which option they want to choose to make that filter. Here I can have them, they can come in and select multiple customers as needed, or if they just want to keep things simple, maybe they have a customer in mind, then they can come in and select a specific customer that they want to see. So now they have an option of how they want to filter the view. Then go ahead and click OK to that. And there it is. As you can see, I just selected one particular view or a customer. And notice how my view, the filter icon becomes illuminated, telling me that indeed I do have a filter applied. And I can click in on that and manage that filter here if I want to. For instance, I can say, well, let's exclude that customer. Maybe I want everybody but Harrington's. And I can go ahead and click OK to that. And it will just reverse the filter for me and just show me every customer that I didn't select in that filter. So, so yeah, a lot of different options, a lot of different things you can do. Notice my column fill color here as well. If I go in and I fill in certain measures that are similar in nature, maybe I want certain ship or freight, customer deals and marketing related expenses color coded a certain way, or freight measures colored and coded a certain way. It just gives it more organization, more, it makes it more appealing, easier on the eyes, if you will, so that the users kind of get a feel for the different related, measures as well, right? A lot of good stuff that you can do here.